For months, the Liberals have been claiming that their bill, C-18, the so-called Online News Act, would help struggling local newspapers and journalists that are so important in our communities. The independent Parliamentary Budget Officer released its estimate that of the $329 million this bill is going to generate, nearly $250 million of it will be going to the major broadcasters like Bell Media, Rogers, and the CBC. So that means less than 25% will go to the newspapers and online news media. So how is this plan about newspapers and local news? Well, Rogers and Bell are already two of the largest companies in this country. They don't need the government to intervene for them to hire their journalists. Then there's the CBC, who always seem to be at the public trough. And actually, to be honest, I'm confused why the CBC is included at all in this legislation. Last year, you may recall, the CBC was given nearly $1.5 billion from the public coffers. So how is that not more than enough to fund their entire operations? Instead of pumping more tax dollars into the CBC, how about the government funding to make room for the smaller and independent broadcasters and journalists, since that is the goal of this stated bill? So from the very beginning, our Conservative team has been skeptical about this bill, and for very good reason. And many experts agree with us. The Minister of Canadian Heritage said the following when he came to committee on October 21st, when he was asked about small newspapers and community radio stations, and I quote, "As I said earlier, there are a lot of programs for those media outlets. I mentioned the Canada Media Fund, for an example, which greatly benefits small media outlets. Consequently, they are much less interested in Bill C-18, even though some have an interest in it." End of quote. So the legislation that this Liberal government concocted to address the protection of journalism in this country, by the minister's own admission, is not of much interest to small outlets. The Online News Act will have an unintended consequence of bolstering the massive profits of the larger media outlets and the publicly funded broadcaster, leaving just crumbs for the smaller players to fight over. So for years, these larger conglomerates have closed their smaller regional outlets in favor of profit over local news. Now the government wants to reward them further, claiming it will protect local news. This is not how to invest in journalism in this country. I'm Kevin Waugh, your Member of Parliament for Saskatoon Grasswood.